Thanks, and thank you for your time. Thanks for hopping on today to learn a little bit about what we're seeing in international beach and what we've kind of uncovered over my last 2 years in this role. So I'm currently the performance analyst for USA's beach national teams. Prior to that, I've been mostly in the women's indoor space with the women's national team and some stops at Stanford and Creighton and Montclair State. In my current role, my biggest goal is to inform our teams with data insights. So what should we practice and why? How should we prepare and scout and think about an upcoming opponent? And how are we tracking towards Olympic success? And how do we keep growing from here? So today I've kind of got a couple different topics here, just trying to assemble all the things that we've uncovered or things that we're seeing at the International Beach Game with some reflections on how that might apply to you. Even if you don't have access to data on your opponents or you see different opponents every weekend to different tournaments, that's okay. What we're really hoping to do is just talk about what we're seeing and what you might want to think about incorporating in your training and in your reflection of your own game, the games of your athletes, and how you can succeed going forward with that in mind. So we have some diversifying offense topics, optioning, jump setting, routes. We have some serving topics, which have been really critical at the international beach level, considering how we serve space, but also the angle at which we look at it. And then beyond the traditional defensive systems, what are some other things that might come about as you go through your beach volleyball journey into the college space and then ultimately into the pro adult space? So taking a look at diversifying offense, we have to start, of course, with the option. My biggest takeaway with the option attack or the on-two attack, whatever you'd like to call it, is that it's happening fairly equally in the men's game and the women's game at the highest levels internationally. I think when many of us think about the option attack, when we think about the on-two attack, we're imagining Aman or Helvig from Sweden, or two large physical beach athletes, typically on the guys' side, soaring through the air and smashing a ball. But we know that's not always the case. When we look at kind of rolling averages here of any sample of attacks taken from any teams that have played on the international tour, we know that of any sample we take, we're usually between 10 and 20% onto attacks in that sample. So whether it's the men's game or the women's games, we see fluctuations, of course, depending on who might be playing that day or how they choose to approach their strategy or what's happening in the game. But over all attacks, over all of the FIVB at the highest levels, we're about 10 to 20% onto attacks, regardless of the gender of the team. And it doesn't have to be like dazzling hard swings, like I alluded to before. We have pokies and rolls and cuts can all be effective. So even younger athletes who aren't at the age where they're totally smashing balls and soaring above the net, that's okay. And even if you're a defender and a player who is not a huge net presence, you can still be an effective on-two attacker with other attacking options. And I personally feel it's helpful to train because we will have to apply it in some situations when there's a tight pass, we're in an emergency, the passer is really not available to be set after they pass. And we have situations where we will probably be forced to attack on-two at some point in our career. Another way to look at this is to just look at this visualization we have of all the different teams that play on the World Tour, the Beach Pro Tour. We kind of have a measure of how strong that team is. The strongest teams will be on the right side here. That's based on their ELO score, which is just a measure of how strong they are. And then we have the percentage of their attacks that are on-two or option attacks. And we know, especially from this visualization, that we don't need the on-two to be elite at the international level, but there are teams that are certainly embracing it. And it's not necessarily just one gender. We have Aman and Helvig up here on the top right. Of course, they won the Olympic gold in Paris, but down here on the bottom right, which is a lower on-two percentage, we have Anna and Duda, who won gold on the women's side. We have Mo and Sorum, who won bronze on the men's side. And we have a cluster of really, really talented women's teams here that are labeled up in this top right that are among the best in the world, and they're on-tuning about 20% of the time. 1 out of every 5 attacks is an on-two attack for them. So just things to think about. If you're not already thinking about it, if you're not incorporating it in your training, it might be something that you want to throw in there every once in a while. And just for inspiration, we have some clips here of Sarah and Kelly in Paris. Again, that's an on-two attack. It's a pokey that she's known for, just trying to find the open space and being a little sneaky. We have a dart there, a downward trajectory swing, but it's not a complete rocket. And then we have kind of a looping roll shot there. Again, like kind of a cut to a shallow area. Here we have Gage and Thomas. They're in their early 20s. They're still in college, and they're just taking their chances at hitting a hard step close and getting up there and attacking the ball straight ahead in their window. This is against Pedrosa and Campos, a really talented pro tour team. And they used the onto effectively in that match against them. Despite being younger than the average pro tour athlete, they're using onto to their advantage to add a different wrinkle to their offense. So I would encourage you to think about how that can be a component of your training if it's not already. Of course, one of the hottest topics in beach volleyball right now is the jump set. I'm sure if you have TikTok or Instagram, you've seen reels of, again, Ahmad and Helvig or Miles and Andy from the United States just kind of soaring through the air and jump setting their teammates. We're seeing it more and more at the lower levels. We see U19 athletes doing it. We see U23 athletes doing it. And I personally feel that it's going to continue to rise because it's created a competitive advantage for the athletes to invest in the learning curve of learning it, even though it won't be pretty right away, and that's okay. We're still collecting a lot of data on this, but we can start to figure out that, and what we would naturally assume is that jump sets are really effective when they're close to the net. We're continuing to collect data on that. We're starting to take a look at in certain boxes kind of along the net, if we're jump setting here or we're standing setting here, what's the difference in efficiency? And we can kind of see on the left side, it's a little bit more prevalent right now, but we're collecting more data, and hopefully you tune back in to an updated Coach Academy session in 2025, and we'll have an update for you there. Anecdotally, we do know that we have to sell the onto attack to be effective. Blockers are getting stronger and stronger at identifying, is this player going to actually attack or are they going to jump set? And they're looking at the feet for an attack step close. They're looking at the arm swings. Are they aggressive and fast and pumping their arms? And it's like, oh, I got to hang out here because this player looks like they're going to swing on too. Or are they approaching it really slowly and it's pretty clear that they're going to be setting the ball? Here's some examples of that. So if you're wondering what I mean, we have this player right here. They take a hard step close. They're doing their double arm swing, getting ready to lift off the ground to hit, and they end up bringing both arms up and setting. But it looks very much like an attack. Same thing here from Miles, and I'll back it up so you can see it again. As we watch Miles make this approach, you're going to see he takes a hard step close, almost like he's hitting, he's swinging his arms back, and then he's coming up to jump set at the last second. In comparison, we have Thomas, who's still developing, and he's kind of approaching a little bit slower. He doesn't take a full step close. He's not selling the attack, and he still delivers a really beautiful jump set, but it's a little bit less effective. If we watch that clip one more time, we can see this blocker from Portugal right here as he runs up to the net. He's kind of hanging out, waiting, and then he sticks with Gage, and he gets a nice touch on Gage's attack there. We want to be deceptive when we jump set. We want to have a nice step close, convince the blocker that we are attacking and they need to stay with us. And if we can keep them there, then when we jump set, that ball is going to travel much faster than the blocker to our attacker. It's going to give our attacker space to score. When we don't sell the jump set, it can still be effective, but we're trading some stability. We're trading the stability of being on the ground and the resulting quality of the set in exchange for holding the blocker. That's the value that we're adding. So if we're not holding the blocker, we're giving up the stability of being on the ground, the quality of the set, and we're not getting anything in return because that blocker is not going to hang out with us. So ways that we think about the jump set, and certainly ways for you to think about the jump set as you experiment a bit with in your training. The other big offensive topic is routes. The higher the level of volleyball, the more attack routes you'll need to be able to perform effectively, to be able to problem solve for all the different defenses you're going to see, the intensity of the serving that you're going to see. We know that 94% of beach pro tour athletes, Americans and internationals, they spend at least 20% of their in-system, meaning good pass attacks, at two different locations on the nets. That's kind of, you can already see in that chart up on the right side. That's a chart of Agatha from Brazil, and she's really spread in where she runs along the net to attack. Of course, she attacks at the left side on the sideline 28% of the time, but you can see she's in that middle area which we call area 2, 23% of the time. She attacks out of the pure middle 22% of the time. And even in those back areas where that's the furthest she has to run away from where she passes the ball, still 27% of the time, she's running all the way around to the other side of the court to hit from there. So among elite beach pro tour athletes, almost half of them have 15% and at least 3 of those buckets, of those 5 buckets. And they're using that to solve different defenses, to find different solutions, to side out and score on receive effectively enough to win matches. So I would encourage you to think about what routes aren't you running? What can you add to your repertoire? And we can see Miles Evans here, a Paris 2024 Olympian, who was in a really tough race to qualify for the Paris Olympics and worked on a lot of different routes. You saw him run behind there, and using these routes, he can overcome size disadvantages, hitting against really tall blockers, really talented blockers, and running around and making it really difficult for them. We know from experience that the more routes opponents are running against us, the more complex our scouting has to be, the tougher it is to discuss defensive schemes and having different options, different defenses for all the different scenarios that you're going to see. So although we might not have a ton of information on a team that you're seeing this weekend that you've never seen before, we want to take the inverse of that. How can you run a lot of different routes to make it hard for them? Even if we can't scout them and know everything about all the routes they're running, we can certainly focus on our training and what are the routes that we're running to be a difficult opponent to play against. And coaches, I think we can find ways, even in competitive randomized activities, the 2-on-2 competition, we can just add a constraint, move the pin or the antenna inside so that player that's really comfortable always approaching to their sideline can approach there. Or we can add a bonus point for every time you run this route, regardless of whether or not you win the point, you get a bonus point just for trying something different, trying something new. Our athletes can still operate in a really competitive framework. They can play to win, but they know they can also access this bonus point by doing something that may not look pretty right away, may not be perfectly related to winning, but helps them in their development and to keep improving and growing in their game. So moving on to serving. What do we know about serving? Of course, we have to start with serving space. It's kind of the big understanding in our scheme, and it's true, and it's still backed by data. Of course, serving space, in the seam, on the sidelines, a lateral space is going to lead to success, or more success than if we pop balls in directly to a player. I was talking to an NCAA coach the other day, a beach coach who was looking for ways to convince his athletes to be more aggressive, to continue serving space. And I think even among the highest levels, we can sometimes get a little bit comfortable not serving space and serving a player. I would encourage coaches to think about how are you communicating that, and what do you communicate when it doesn't go our way, when it goes wrong. We can certainly express frustration that our athletes might be serving the ball out of bounds, or look at a match that we lost and say, oh man, we hit 5 serves out of bounds. I wish we had those 5 points back. And that's a very normal feeling to experience, but there are more optimal ways we can likely communicate that. We can recognize what kind of service area it is. Oh, you were aggressive. You hit 1 foot out of bounds and it was a bullet, and you serve for space and we just didn't quite hit our target. Or it's okay to recognize, hey, I know you were aiming for space and you hit it right onto that player's shoulders, and that's okay. Let's keep aiming for space. Let's think about our follow through. But we want to make sure we're encouraging, in my opinion, encouraging the process, encouraging the focus, encouraging the effort that's being applied, and making sure that our players are on the same page, and then the results will come, instead of expressing frustration with the result and leading to tentative players who are just going to get the ball in because they don't want to generate a negative result. Although we all are kind of on the same page already about serving space over serving a player on their body, selecting which space impacts the routes they run. And I think a lot of times our default is serving right down the middle. I would encourage you to think about serving the sideline a little bit more. In this example, we're scouting a player. This is the exact scout that we sent to our team. And we have that player's attack efficiencies when they pass the ball in those different lanes. So that middle lane, that middle space, they hit 550, which you don't need to know all about attack efficiency. You just need to know that that's pretty dang good and really hard to beat. And when we serve the space closer to the sideline, they hit 335, which is much lower and a little bit easier to beat. So in this case, we knew based on data that we had to serve that player in that green zone a decent chunk of the time if we were going to beat her in that match. But the big takeaway, if we look at that 68% below on the sideline, that player, when we serve the green space, she runs there 68% of the time. So it's simplified our defense as well. And again, we recognize that we may not have this data on a high school opponent, even a college opponent, certainly not a juniors opponent who we're just meeting for the first time when we arrive to the beach for a day of volleyball. But I would encourage you to think about what's hard for me to receive. Do I really hate the sideline serve? Do I really hate the seam serve? I was talking to a AVP veteran, now retired, and he was explaining to me as we were talking about data analytics, he would sometimes just pray, like, I really hope they don't serve me in this way, to serve me shallow sideline. It just makes me so uncomfortable. And I think hoping is certainly one strategy, but if we can think critically about what do I not like, and then how can I add that to my practice? Just 1 out of every 5 balls, I'm going to serve that really uncomfortable one to you. And we're going to keep working on how do we get out of that situation? Where do we go from that situation? And what is an efficient footwork to get to the net where we want to be from that situation, and kind of shore up that discomfort in a certain area and try to make us really well-rounded. So when teams try all different things, like, no, I've practiced these things. I feel moderately comfortable in at least as many of them as I can, and I feel really great in others. As opposed to, I feel really rough and really scared of with sideline serves, but I feel great on seam serves, and I'm kind of rolling the dice that that team does not serve me down the sideline. So I'd encourage you to try to be well-rounded in the different serves that you see in practice and that you implement in practice. And this is the big one. The big takeaway for us over the last 2 years is how important the angle of the serve is. We talk about serving space. I think as a tendency with youth athletes, we start them in the middle of the court and, hey, just go serve at his zone 6, the dead middle, because it's the least risky. We're serving out to the sidelines a lot less because we're starting in the middle. But we know from even the best athletes in the world that the angle at which they see a serve into the exact same spot of space will greatly impact their ability to score on the attack 2 touches later. These are 2 charts from Laura Ludwig. She's a 5-time Olympian. We have on the left serves that went to her into her seam. She's kind of standing on the right side or the left side of the court, kind of in that box labeled 5 and that box labeled 7. We can see that when she gets served from 5, she hits 232 on her attack efficiency. Again, you don't need to know what it means. Just know that's a very beatable number. That's a good number for the serving team. On the right there, we can see all those little dots. Those are where she passed the ball to. So where the setter stood to receive her pass. And we can see it's kind of a bit more scattered than the one on the right. It's much further away, almost some to the far sideline. And looking at her attacks below, she swings a lot more to the middle of the court, doesn't hit the deep court as often, and is just hitting a little bit more safer shots without getting too far into the weeds on those swings. When we look at the chart on the right, these are serves to the exact same space. In fact, the space that I have highlighted there on that chart on the right is actually a little bit bigger, a little bit more challenging, but she hits a 400 attack efficiency on those same space serves just from area 1 from the right. That's almost double in attack efficiency and basically the same space, actually a little bit generous, a little bit harder of a space to pass from, and she's hitting better. So I would encourage you to think about serving from all different locations. I certainly have come across athletes, even international pro athletes, and we have this great data. Hey, if we can topspin from 5, we really feel like we can make a difference here and really put this player, this receiver, in an uncomfortable situation. And even still, in adult age, some of our athletes say, I haven't practiced that in a couple of weeks. So that's something that we will then build into their training if it's something that we can train quickly enough to become an advantage for us. And I would encourage you to think about all the different serves that you have at your disposal. And coaches, I would challenge your athletes once they start getting comfortable in one area and they're just kind of on autopilot running back to serve from that same area, say, hey, move over, go serve somewhere else. And it's fine. And if you miss, it's okay, go serve again. But I'm encouraging you and trying to get you comfortable in a lot of different areas. And I think if we encourage that, if that's built into our framework of, hey, we're here to get better, we're here to be aggressive, we're not going to be critically upset over missed serves, as long as we're being aggressive and trying our best and staying focused, then I think that we can generate much better results over a longer time period than sticking with just the things that we're really, really good at. So moving on to our last portion of this is our defensive systems portion. And this is one of the questions that I get from our coaches and from other people the most, like, when as defenders can we start our move? So for background, we have defensive systems or block moves we'll call from 1 through 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. In block moves 1 and 2, if you're not already familiar, we just have the blocker taking line or angle, and then the defender parked in the opposite area. For 3s and 4s, we have a blocker showing one thing and then diving diagonally to do the other. And we have the defender showing one thing and sprinting the other way to do the other. So they're showing one image, and then as soon as the attacker goes to hit, they're switching. The blocker is going to dive one way or the other, and the defender is going to run. So the question is, for those moves, when is it okay for me to run? And my answer is, well, when do the best attackers in the world look? And we can see on this little video, this GIF on the left here, we have Kristen Nuss. When she hits her step close, right there is when she is going to look through the net traditionally. And she is just one example here, and that's kind of the basis across all of the Beach Pro Tour is the best attackers are going to hit their step close, their last 2 steps of their approach, and they're going to look through the net, even just for a second, and they're going to glance and try to figure out where you are as the blocker. The best attackers in the world are looking for the defender too, and then they're going to make an attack decision based on what they see. Oftentimes, certainly some attackers are predetermining, they are going to hit the same shot no matter what, or they're deciding ahead of time, but certainly a lot of attackers are trying to score based on what they see right when they hit that step close. On the flip side here, as we're watching this video, we have Barbara from Brazil on the right. She certainly does take a look a lot of the time. I just found the clip where she didn't. We can see her chin is kind of always pointed up. She doesn't get a chance to really look through the net, and as a result, kind of roll shots a soft ball to the middle of the court, very easily dug by the Dutch defender there. So one takeaway I would be to make things as defensively challenging as possible for your opponent, to do your best to practice looking through the net on your step close. If you can just get a glance for a second to help slow things down for you and to make things a little bit easier to help your decision making. If you can't, bring your chin down and look through, see if we can take a look out of our peripheral vision as we start to jump up into our attack. But since we're talking about defensive systems, I would encourage you as a defender to be looking for that in your opponent. Within the first 2-3 points of a practice, of a game, of a tournament, anytime you see a team, if you're intent and watching as a defender, you can see pretty quickly, oh, this player is not looking at all. They have no idea where I am. If that's the case, then we can move a little bit sooner. As we get to higher and higher levels of our sport, more and more attackers are looking, and we're going to have to be patient and wait and continue to work on being explosive, being efficient with our footwork, and not leaving until we can. So let me show you some clips of what that looks like. We'll see Sarah Hughes serving and then running on here. We're waiting for the step close right now, and then she goes. And I've got 3 more clips here for you to take a look at that. It can be a little bit hard to see at full speed, but we're just looking for the last 2 steps of this attacker's approach, and then she makes her move. And certainly we'll run 3s and 4s where we're sprinting across the court, and we won't make the dig. Our athletes are choosing to run a play based on what's happened before in the game, what they know about the opponent, trying to catch them, hitting a shot into what they think is open space, and then they're saying, not so fast, I'm sprinted in there and I'm getting that ball like Kristen did just there. So the big thing is that step close, because we know the athlete will look right after their step close. And generally, that's when our best defenders leave. They see the step close, the player looks to the net, then as soon as that attacker looks up at the ball, the defender's out of there, going to the area that they want. So I'd encourage you to look through the net as much as you can as an attacker, develop that skill set now. It's something that you could do at home with a family member, a parent, a sibling, and just have them hold up fingers, different numbers, or if you're fortunate enough to have a net nearby, you could have them go stand in different spots and try to hit where they're not. Or even if you're just with a partner or a friend on the beach, you can self-toss to yourself, look, and then take a look or jump and hit that ball where that player is not standing, ideally, and see how many you get right. Coaches, I think we can add that in blocked training activities and encourage them to do that in a non-competitive setting, and make the goal of that activity how many times you hit the ball in the right area where the defender is not, or if you have the ability to look through the net and watch them and grade them. Yeah, or have them grade themselves. Thumbs up after every rep if you really felt like you got a good look. Thumbs medium if you're like, I as the athlete didn't really feel like I looked, or maybe I saw a little bit, or thumbs down if I didn't look at all. And have that athlete just give you the thumbs up if they felt like they saw it. So then they are reflecting on their own development. And then you're just affirming, yeah, I agree. That was a thumbs up play. You really did a nice job taking a look there. So different options for you to incorporate that into your training. And then the last thing with defensive systems, we oftentimes do get boxed into those preset numbers, the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s. And there's plenty of information out there if you're not already familiar with what those mean. But we're seeing more and more that the best teams in the world are doubling up. So their blocker blocks a 2, which is an angle block, and their defender goes the same way. Or their blocker blocks a 1, and the defender says, wait a minute, they're roll shotting down the line, and they run that way, and they cover the same court. So here's some clips of Olympic gold medalists Anna and Duda, and you'll see them just both covering the angle together. Sometimes this is the defender making a really great read and they think they see something. Other times, like in this clip, it's not. That was not at all what Taryn's hitting, but they were determining that Taryn was probably pretty likely to hit angle there, which she did in 2 out of those 3 clips, I believe. And so they said, let's send both the blocker and the defender to cover that area. I think that's more of an advanced concept, but I would encourage you, if you're in a match and you're looking to get better and you're exploring, you're like, man, we really can't figure this defender out. Maybe there is some sequence of, we're going to cover the angle twice. And then when we establish that and the attacker we're seeing says, oh, all right, like they're really going for that angle coverage, then maybe we run a play where the defender sprints into the line. But there's different ways we can kind of explore that. I think most of it is kind of iterative based on what you're seeing in the game, what you know about the attacker that you're playing, and what you think they know about you. So a lot of that comes down to scouting, and it comes down to our athletes knowing their opponents really, really well because they see them over and over and over. But I do think it's good to mention that you don't necessarily have to be confined to those 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. I would encourage you to be creative and think about how you might want to do something a little bit different. And some of the best athletes in the world have reached that level by embracing something a little bit different, by finding some little bit of advantage like Duda and Anna were searching for there. So I would encourage you to think outside the box as much as you like. It's an important component of beach volleyball. And then our last topic in defensive systems, I certainly believe and know from our data that there's value in using shots to move our defenders to different spots. So of course, if we get a kill, great. We don't have to worry about that defender hitting back at us. There's no transition play. We killed the ball. We ended the play. But we know that maybe 40% of the time, even at the highest levels, players won't kill the ball, and they're then going to have to defend in transition. In indoor, we have these concepts of sending a free ball over, and coaches will say, we got to send a free ball to zone 1 because that's where the setter is, or maybe zone 2 close to the net so we can interrupt where the setter is going, or maybe zone 3 to block the middle, to make the middle pass the free ball. In beach, I found that oftentimes we don't think in this way, or we don't talk about it as much. We can hit shots if we're in a bailout situation, if we're sending a free ball, if we just need to get the ball over, we can hit a shot into an area where we know that the defender is not that strong. Again, this is Laura Ludwig. She's a 5-time Olympian. On her strong side in transition, she's hitting 404. Again, a fantastic attack efficiency that's really hard to beat. When she hits in transition out of the middle or on her weak side, which is her left side, she hits 159. Her effectiveness is cut more than in half. And this is, again, a 5-time Olympian who's been training for, I believe, almost 20 years, if not more. So certainly we all have these things in our game where we're a little bit more comfortable. Transition attacking is one thing that we don't always think about at the lower levels in terms of Am I better on the left or the right? Because my opponent is going to control where I attack a lot of the time. Unless I dig a ball incredibly high and give myself all the time in the world to run back to the other side of the court, there are going to be times where I'm forced to attack on one side of the court. So here's Laura, and in all of these clips, she's being forced over to this left side. And I think Taryn and Kristen hit these shots, not because we had this data, but because they felt it was the best shot to hit in that moment. But you can see as we watch a couple of these clips how clunky it is for Laura to dig this ball, to get back up on her feet, or to turn around and transition, and how clunky it is for that setter who normally is not setting her in that direction. She's receiving on the other side and being set on the other side. So that whole play is likely something that they don't practice very often intentionally. And there's not as much transfer from their first ball offense, from their received set attack, because they don't do it on that side. So in this case, it's just a little bit more awkward for Laura, and she's being forced to attack on that side of the net if she even gets the chance to attack in transition. So I'm not saying you should only hit roll shots and not go for the kill and only swing in the area where you think your opponent can dig and then be uncomfortable attacking, but it certainly is a consideration. And again, with all of these things that are data-driven, even if you don't have the data, I would encourage you to think about it in reverse, in the inverse. Where am I most uncomfortable attacking in transition? And coaches, like our blockers who are setting our diggers and transition attackers, are they getting setting reps facing both ways? It's a really simple idea, but a lot of times 70, 80, 90% of their reps in practice are all facing the way that they would be facing in first ball. And especially if that passer is not running different routes, like we talked about earlier, if they're only staying on their side, then that blocker is never setting them on the other side, or very rarely setting them on the other side. So as they come up, they are forced to do different things, do different routes, or they're stuck in these boxes where we're committing so much practice time to the essentials that we never go outside of that and try something a little bit different, or try these situations that happen a little less often. So I would encourage you always to think about what are the things, and to embrace the things that are uncomfortable for you, to think about how we can sprinkle them into practice, moving an antenna, setting up some cones, bonus pointing, a winning focused activity to just add a little wrinkle to encourage us to do something else, and not just do something else, but to do it aggressively and to take a chance, because we want the bonus point for running the different route, attacking in transition on a different side, for running a special defensive play that we want to explore mentally. But we also are encouraged to do those things aggressively because we want the point from winning that competitive activity. So I certainly think there's places to do blocked activities. We're like, all right, we're going to slow things down and just look through the net. But then I think we can expand upon it and find ways to incorporate those into our competitive activities and training, into how we deliver feedback and our focuses for match environments. If we're coaching two athletes in a match, or if you and I are playing as partners, and what do we want to talk about when we have our water break? What do we want to talk about after the game? Even if we feel like, ooh, this team's a little bit better than us today, we can still set goals inside that game. Hey, I'm just going to work on looking through, and we can work on running this route that we normally don't. And let's see if we can do that in a game environment. So I think there's a lot of different options for you to think about. I know we went through a lot of different topics. My email address is there. I mean this when I say it. Please send me an email if you have questions or thoughts or things that you'd like to know more about, and I can do my best to support you in your development through that journey. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being committed to your learning as an athlete, or to your learning as a coach, and I'll see you out on the sand.